Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video, we'll be taking a look at Outlaw Rogues, and we're back in the Order Hall where the spec started. Ever since they changed it from Combat to Outlaw, I've been playing Outlaw from the beginning. And right now, currently in this raid here, with the Battle for Dalaran raid and Season 2 of Mythic Plus, this spec is at an insane spot. Don't get me wrong, it was already pretty good for Old Deer since most of the fights were AoE, which is the bread and butter for Outlaw. But now with the new seasonal affix for Reaping, all those little ghosties literally melt to an Outlaw Rogue. So much so that people are actually running them in top rankings. Let's talk a bit about the spec and about how good it is and give you guys all the information you need in order to start playing Outlaw. First of all, I'll link you guys my original guide for Outlaw at the beginning of BFA. It'll go into a little bit more detail about some of the parts of the spec. We'll try to cover as much of the stuff we can in this video, but feel free to check that out. Second, simming is going to be your best friend. So if you don't know what that is, and if you really want to play Outlaw seriously for PvE, you might want to start simming your character. I have a link down in the description below for a video I've done a while back on how to sim your character, and I'll mention that you can sim certain parts in this video, but I'll also give you guys my cheat sheet if you want to just jump into Outlaw, into some raids, into some dungeons casually. Alright, let's talk about the spec, and it's where is it at on damage. Outlaw Rogue is an insanely good spec. When it comes to the actual single target damage of this spec, it's good, but it's not great. It's not game-breaking. It is not the greatest single target damage. If you're looking for that, Assassination might be a little bit closer. But Outlaw doesn't have the burst that other specs have, where they can just start at a high end and keep going. Outlaw gradually gets to a point where it's pretty high up there and then plateaus at a fairly high point. So while other specs have burst, you don't really have burst, but insanely strong single target sustain. Where Outlaw is amazing at is as soon as more than one enemy enters the fight, bam, you're doing top damage, burst, AoE, in cleave, 2 targets, 3 targets, 10 targets, 20. This is the bread and butter of where Outlaw sits in. The more enemies enter the fight, especially if it's a short term, the more damage output you will have. And that's a lot of opportunity you get with a brand new raid and in Mythic Pluses. Let's talk a bit about the spec. What do you want to do? First of all, stats are going to be kind of all over the place. You will need to sim your character if you want to get more accurate results. But here's a cheat sheet. Get haste to about 14 or 15%. So you're looking between 800 points and 1,000 points worth of haste. Once you get there, then your spec will start to feel really smooth when it comes to gameplay. Whether you're running deeper stratagem for slower, more calculated gameplay, or vigor for more pistol shotty, very quick paced gameplay. After that, start investing points into both critical strike and versatility. Keep them as equal as possible, because you never know, with new Azerite pieces of gear, you might get a piece tomorrow and it requires more versatility. And then you might get a piece next day and it requires more critical strike. Now that you have both, you'll be able to do a fair amount of damage. Just try to avoid mastery as best as humanly possible. Some pieces of gear are simply going to have mastery if they're an insane item level increase. Simmon will help you find better decisions, but like 15 item level better, even if it has mastery, is still going to be an upgrade due to raw agility stats. Alright, let's talk a bit about some enchants and gemming. Just go for critical strike for 1 ring, versatility for the other. For most of you, I'm running a crit heavy build because of the playstyle, so you can see I got a bunch of gems and everything. For your main weapon, run versatile navigation, and for your offhand, run deadly navigation. Speaking about weapons, I know people are going to ask me, can Outlaw Rogues use a dagger? Yes, just in the offhand. Main hand has to be a one-hander. One-hander being mace, axe, sword, or fist. In the offhand, you can have whatever the hell you want. The second best possible weapon is what you would add, or a really nice dagger that has stats to complement your spec. So this one is going to be really up to you. Whether you have a dagger, whether you have a heavier weapon, doesn't really make that much of a difference for Outlaw Rogues. Some of the trinkets you might want to run as a spec, I'll have a link to the website called Hero Damage. Hero Damage is very similar to Blood Mallet in terms of how it functions, but Hero Damage is ran by a rogue main, so that's why you would want to use Hero Damage, because there's a good chance most of the sims are as accurate as possible specifically for rogues. And if you want to find the best trinkets, here's a list right here. You can go to Outlaw, Raid Bosses. These are the best single target trinkets. And you can see a whole list of them. If you want to swap to dungeons, you can go to Hero Dungeon M+. And they'll show you some of the best trinkets and talent combinations that you might want to run, just as suggestion. But the trinkets that I have right now are Yulon from the raid, Dead Eye Spyglass from the dungeon for Borealis. If you're looking at the raid right now, some of the best trinkets from it are actually all 3 trinkets that show up. You have the Claw of Kimbul, Invocation of Yulon, and Variable Intensity Gigavolt Oscillating Reactor. All 3 are good for Outlaw and decent. The best is going to be Claw, then it's Gigavolt, then it is Yulon. And from dungeons, there's a couple dungeons you might want to look out for, especially if you want to do them in Mythic 0. Freehold with the Harlan's Dice is a great trinket. Siege of Borealis with the Spyglass is a great trinket. And finally, for single target, you might want to look at Tol de Gore. Kultiran Cannibal Runner is a stationary trinket, but when the boss doesn't move, it does a fair amount of damage. So those are some of the decent trinkets for you guys to look forward to. Alright, let's talk a bit about Azerite traits, and we can go back to hero damage on that. I have a link down for hero damage for you guys to check out and explore, but you can literally go from trinkets to Azerite powers right here. Same concept, you have raid bosses, and then M+. Raid boss is a single target, hero dungeon is for AoE in Mythic Pluses. Here you can see what are the best traits. You can see Brigand's Blitz is a good trait, Treacherous Covenant is a good trait, Ace Up Your Sleeve is a good trait with Deeper Stratagem as a talent. Deadshot is good. And then you got a bunch of single target. And then at the bottom you have Keep Your Wits. But if you swap over to the AoE, you're going to see that Keep Your Wits is going to be the best, then Treacherous, but you need Keep Your Wits, I feel like, as Outlaw. I'm going to rock that no matter what in my gear at all times for any kind of AoE, at least 1 stack of it. You can see a couple things. First of all, like Brigand's Blitz is amazing. You can also find out which are the best traits to stack. Brigand's Blitz seems to be the best one, but do you want to stack it? Change it to by stack, go down. Where's Brigand's? It's at the bottom. Don't really want to stack it, but Ace Up Your Sleeve, Deadshot, Treacherous Covenant, those would be your options as Outlaw Rogue. So use the website to take a look at some of the different traits. Of course, you can always just personalize sim your character for more accuracy. Let's talk a bit about what I'm rolling right now. You can actually see it with my one of my add-ons. It's showcasing all of the different talents I'm running as well as the gear. You have the crown from the raid, and I'm rocking with that Keep Your Wits and Ace Up Your Sleeve. Keep Your Wits is always going to be amazing, and I run this even in single target situations because most of the raids, most of the situations allow me to run Keep Your Wits in order to cleave on any extra targets. This also allows my set to be kind of like a one-and-all set, so I don't have to have multiple head pieces where I just have a single target hit and an AoE head. Having one Keep Your Wits increases your AoE potential by a tremendous amount, and it's not that much of a downgrade for pure single target situation. That's what I went up running and suggesting for a lot of you. I end up getting lucky with triple Ace Up Your Sleeve, so I'm going to change my playstyle as the website goes and go for Deeper Stratagem. Lots of damage, big crits, up to 93k crits with you between the eyes in dungeons, and growing higher as I'm getting better gear. Then I have 1 Brigand's Blitz, and I end up getting 1 Snake Eyes from the chest piece I got from buying from a vendor, which isn't terrible. It's a decent chest piece. Snake Eyes is not great ever since they nerfed it, but I might make a build on Snake Eyes for Slice and Dice, and I might revisit it on PTR in the recent future. So those are the pieces of gear that I'm rolling right now. You guys can get different builds. Deadshot is a great trait. Triple stack and Deadshot is going to be good as well. Deadshot or Ace Up Your Sleeve or any combination of those two, any combination that you want is going to be the most damage increase for your spec of Outlaw. Whether you want the bursty playstyle with crit heavy or still crit heavy Deadshot with a more active, faster paced playstyle. Alright, let's talk a bit about the talents, and you can actually see them right here. I'm going to show you the big talents, but you can see them down here too. Quick Draw is the only good option in this row for the common point generation and damage. Going to be needed for your generation, common point management, and overall output. Acrobatic Strikes is my choice for level 30. You can choose whatever you want in this row. Level 45, if you're running Ace Up Your Sleeve build, Deeper Stratagem is a must. I would say having 2 Ace Up Your Sleeve traits is going to be enough to validate Deeper Stratagem. It'll mean slower playstyle, but overall more value damage if you can go for a crit heavy playstyle. If you feel uncomfortable, Vigor is always a nice safety net, and in some cases is the better damage option, like if you have a Deadshot heavy build. Level 60, I think Cheat Death is the best for any kind of PvE encounter, especially when you're learning them. Level 75, you can run whatever you want, but Prey on the Weak synergizes really well inside of dungeons. Level 90, Alacrity is a must, and level 100, Blade Rush is a must for any pure single target damage. So this is what I'm going to run in all my raids. While, however, Killing Spree is going to be the go-to for Mythic Pluses, and the way that it's synergized with some of my traits, like Keep Your Wits About You, so I'm able to use Killing Spree on a trash or mobs, stacking up my extra effect for Cinder Strike. Very, very synergetic. Alright, let's talk a bit about the rotation of the spec. How do you play Outlaw? So I'm going to go over some of the basics, and I kind of want to angle myself on a train dummy so I'm not auto-attacking it, so we can actually see some of my abilities. So you want to build common points with an ability of Sinister Strike. Sinister Strike is going to be a basic ability, dealing physical damage, generating common points, has a chance to hit twice. And when it hits twice, it gives you a pistol shot, a proc, where pistol shot will cost half the cost, but have double the damage. Normally you don't use pistol shot, you only use it whenever you get the proc. So you're going to Sinister Strike for common points. When you get the proc for opportunity, you're going to use it. Once you get a full 5 common points, you're either going to use a finisher or a buff. Here we'll use a finisher just to demonstrate something. I'm going to still keep going through my buffs right now for like a second. What I'm looking for is this. When you have opportunity proc and you have almost full common points, you never want to overcap on common points. So when you have opportunity, use the finisher, then pistol shot. Never overcap on combo points. It's better to sacrifice less combo points into a finisher than wasting a pistol shot proc with 2 combo points. So that's basically going to be the generation of all of your combo points when it comes to your spec. Managing that and keeping that in mind is going to be important when it comes to getting the most value out of your spec. Alright, let's talk a bit about what you do with your finishers and your combo points. Once you have full combo points as an outlaw, first thing you want to do is roll the bones. Now, if you're a starter, there's a couple different buffs you want to look out for. You want to look out for either Shark buff, Grand Melee, any 2 buff, or any 5 buff. Shark buff, which is known as Ruthless Precision, is a great buff, gives all your abilities extra crit, and Between the Eyes has a more chance to crit. When you get this buff in particular, you want to use Between the Eyes as often as possible. This doesn't really play with any build. I'll talk about how Azerite traits affect your builds in a little bit. Another buff you're looking for, as we're going to reroll, True Bearing is going to cut down the cooldown of a lot of your abilities. Just simply keep in mind, knowing that Killing Spree, Adrenaline Rush, and Between the Eyes are going to be off cooldown a lot faster while True Bearing is running. Broadside is a buff you don't really keep, at least at first when you're new at the spec. Simming yourself will help you figure out what buffs you need to keep. But remember, with this one, you'll generate extra common points from all of your abilities. So if you're ever in a situation where you'll say you have 5 combo points, it's better to use your finishers on not full combo points. So if you can land yourself at 5, that's perfect. If you're running Vigor, try to land yourself at 4 as best as you can, because you're generating so many combo points, it's better not to overroll. Sometimes it happens, there's nothing you can do about it. But just try to have 1 less than max of combo points for finishers whenever you're using Broadside. We're going to reroll. Skull and Crossbones will simply just give you more procs for your roll the Sinister Strikes to proc pistol shots. We have True Buried Treasure, which is going to give you more energy regen. We've seen that one already. True Bearing we've seen as well. True Bearing we've seen as well. Grand Melee is a good buff, especially if you're a starter. If you get Grand Melee, you don't need to reroll out of it. As you develop better builds like the one I'm running, I don't use Grand Melee as a single buff anymore. But if you're new to Outlaw, keep with this buff because it'll give you extra auto attack, which is a good chunk of your damage. And overall, it'll allow you to either keep Grand Melee, Shark buff, any 2 buff, or any 5 buff combo, which gives you definitely far more variety of buffs to keep. A lot of people complain about Outlaw, oh, they hate the RNG aspect of it, but as a BFA, there's a lot more buffs for you to maintain, as the other buffs, it's not worth maintaining them, at least for PvE, simply because you're losing out on potential damage. It is overall statistically better to just re-roll for a better buff, and then start getting more value out of the damage. Let's talk about more rotational abilities. If you're running Killing Spree, you want to make sure you're full and empty of energy. You want to make sure you're empty of energy before you use it on single target or AoE. If you know there's going to be a later part with a dungeon or a raid boss that will have more enemies, save Killing Spree for the AoE components. Blade Rush, you use this basically on cooldown no matter the situation. If you can time it together with your cleave, that's great, but use it basically on cooldown. Lastly, I'll talk about the opener for Outlaw Rogues, and this opener is going to be universal no matter what build you are running. It's a simple opener. You have to go for, I'm going to do it slowly as well. Adrenaline Rush, Stealth on Enemy, Ambush, Vanish, ambush. If you have Blade Rush, you use Blade Rush. Build Sinister Strikes until you have full common points, roll the bones, then you continue with your rotation. While I'm showing you my rotation, by the way, one of the things I'll talk about is the change to the playstyle. Since I'm running Ace Up Your Sleeve as a trait, and if you end up running Ace Up Your Sleeve, especially if you stack it, basically you want to use Between the Eyes at as many common points as you can without overdrawing common points on cooldown, especially if you have crit buff and even without a crit buff. If you're running something like Deadshot, basically the same thing. You want to make sure to get a Between the Eyes as often as you can on cooldown and follow that up with a pistol shot proc. Basically, you want to make sure to always have Between the Eyes on cooldown, so you always have a pistol shot proc ready, especially if you have a bunch of those traits put together. Outside of that, the spec is actually a lot of fun. It is amazing for any kind of AoE, which let me talk a bit about the amazingness of Outlaw Rogue AoE. We have this nifty ability called Blade Flurry. What it does is makes any kind of single target cleave for 45% of the damage for 12 seconds. You turn it on once, pay 15 energy early, and then you cleave with all of your abilities. A lot of your abilities can cleave, like Blade Rush will deal 100% damage to everybody around if you have Blade Flurry active, and Killing Spree will deal 100% damage to everybody in split damage, I guess, if it has Blade Flurry component active. So combining these abilities with big AoE is going to be very, very important to getting the most value out of bursty AoE for Outlaw. But it's very simple. All you do is turn on Blade Flurry and then proceed with your single target rotation. It is that simple. If you have any kind of playstyle like I have at Ace Up Your Sleeve, I'll usually try to get a full max common points Ace Up Your Sleeve with Blade Flurry to try to see if it can cleave all around. Any ability becomes a cleave. So you will try to get as much value during that as possible. You do have limited amount of charges of Blade Flurry. You start with 2 charges and then recharge over time, 25-second recharge. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you have these charges ready for any AoE pack. So if you learn the boss fights, know that there's going to be more ads coming out or more targets to hit, say Blade Flurry for that. If you're doing Mythic Plus dungeons and you see a trash pack of 3 enemies in front of you, but you know there's a pack of 8 enemies after that, maybe it's a good idea to only burn 1 charge on the 3 pack and then 2 charges on the 8 pack. So you kind of have to manage the charges and decide for yourself when it's a good time to use them and when it's not a good time, and maybe it's a good idea to save. You're basically just trying to bank as many explosive abilities during that Blade Flurry with the biggest trash pack you can. The better you can do that, the better your damage output will be as an Outlaw Rogue. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Outlaw Rogues are in an incredible spot right now in Battle for Azeroth, the 2nd tier, or I guess 2nd season, as some people have started calling it. We're doing amazing in Mythic Plus, super fun, and a really solid spec for the current raid. I feel like if you haven't picked up Outlaw, I feel like it's a good idea. The damage speaks for itself. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out the links down below to help yourselves, help me help you get better at Outlaw. And I'll see all of you guys in another video.